Another Dooley Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, welcome into another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. We usually have Coach Spurrier on here on the Wednesday show, but he had another appointment, so he's going to join us on Friday's show. And that'll be great to talk to him. And instead today, Matt Baker, who's a good friend of mine from the Tampa Bay Times, does a great job covering the state of Florida. We'll talk to him about Florida and FSU and Miami, and I guess we'll get into some UCF talk. And then I think we'll have Coach Spurrier again, not only on Friday, but again on Wednesday. So as we're trying to kind of get through this month of July, which is, as you know, one of the most boring months in the world. You know what's not going to be boring? August, because there's going to be a lot going on, including a Gator game in August, first time in a long time. But I just found out I have jury duty in August. So, news for Zach, I have it on a Monday in August. Who knows how long it's going to go? We may not have shows for a while, but it could be one and done, and I don't know. It's a duty, you have to do it, and I'm planning on doing it. It's ironic, I think. Although my wife is always telling me that I don't know the difference between irony and coincidence, right? So I think it's ironic that I've gotten into, she made me get into this show called Jury Duty, which is hilarious. It's tremendous. But because now all of a sudden, right after I get done watching the last one, I get jury duty. Well, I don't think it's going to be as funny, certainly. I always worry that I'm going to get like a big murder trial or something, and I don't want to decide that. I don't want it. No, I'd rather be able to sit at home and watch it on TV and go, nah, he should go to jail. Yeah, but I've been on jury duty once in my life. It was a really quick day trial, and it was pretty easy. So hopefully we get the same thing, but we'll see what happens. It is time for us to go to our Process Service of Gainesville starting 5. And for those of you who don't know, Process Service of Gainesville offers a rapid turnaround on affidavits of service for Gator lawyers locally and nationwide. Not just locally, but nationwide. And we know we've got a lot of listeners and viewers of this podcast nationwide, all over and in other nations. So there you go. Our friend Scott Hart offers immediate responses on status requests and is a member of NAPPS and FAPPS, and he has been a part of this community for almost 2 decades. If you need service, call Pro Service of Gainesville at 407-697-9592 or email shartg8tr, Gator, shartgator at yahoo.com, and make sure you ask about the paralegal and legal secretary bonus program, okay? So all that stuff is out there. This is stuff way over my head, but I love that Scott Hart came aboard and is going to be a part of this. And those of you who need this, and those of you attorneys, I know a million attorneys listen to this show all the time, so you've got somebody to turn to, and Scott Hart at Process Service of Gainesville. Let's get to the starting 5. And starting off with Wyatt Langford. Wyatt Langford picked 4th in the draft. That was the biggest story this week, to me, in Gainesville. We always look at what are the biggest stories in Gainesville. Now, sometimes they're national stories, and there'll be a couple of national stories here we'll talk about. But the biggest story in Gainesville was Wyatt Langford getting drafted the other night, and that was, what was that, Monday night or Sunday night? Sunday night, yeah. And it was great. 4th in the draft. A lot of people thought he'd go 3rd. He went to the Rangers, who were on the rise. I'm happy for him. He'd much rather play, I'm sure, in Texas by the looks of his boots that he was wearing than in Detroit. But the bottom line is this is a guy who had 5 at-bats as a freshman. And as a junior, I think he might have been the best player in the country. You can make an argument. I know that I think Cruz won the Golden Spikes Award. Caglione won a bunch of awards, but I think Wyatt Langford is in the argument for best player in the country, and they obviously felt that way. Happy for him. And let's get to our Campus USA play of the weekend, because as you know, there's not a lot going on in the world of sports. There's some things we'll talk about. Not a lot going on until maybe next week and the week after. But our play of the weekend was right here, and this was a good one, and it made me very happy. I will tell you that.
Of the 2023 MLB Draft, the Texas Rangers select Wyatt Langford.
And there it is, Wyatt Langford. Pick for the fourth pick. He knew. And that's the thing. They already know because they've gotten a call and they said, hey, we're going to pick you. So, but I'm just so happy for him. He's good dude, great player, and I'm going to miss watching him play. I'm going to miss watching him be a Florida player. I will recommend to Scott Strickland, who I think we may have on next Friday. I think he's out of the country right now, but I think we may have him on next Friday to talk about stadium expansion and everything. But I'm going to recommend that, in October maybe, you have Wyatt Langford be your Mr. Two-Bits. Why not? I will stand up and cheer. How about that? But it is kind of a weird dynamic at Florida, where they have not had, never had a number one pick in anything. Not the first player picked in any sport. I saw LSU put it up, and they should be tooting their horn. They've had the number one player in basketball, baseball, football. And again, a lot of it has to do with how Florida, the timing. Neil Walk would have been the number one pick, but there was a guy named, at the time, Lou Alcindor, who came out the same year. So he was the second pick. There's been a lot of guys. Zanino, you could have made him the number one pick. Spurrier was, I think, the third pick in the draft. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. But it is important, and it certainly was a good recruiting tool for Kevin O'Sullivan to say, hey, this guy got 5 at-bats his freshman year, and we turned him into an All-American. And it continued as we continue with the process service of Gainesville starting 5, and that is the rest of the draft. Happy for all these guys. Waldrop, also a first rounder. The funny thing is, and I wrote about this in my back nine, I was saying, golly, they had 2 first round picks, and what did they do? Oh yeah, that's right, they played the last game of the season. And the team that beat them had the first 2 picks in the draft. Now, one of them they never had to face, but still, it was there. That, and it was on their minds on that third game that he was going to come into the game. But all the Gators that got drafted, Sproat goes to the Mets for the second year in a row. Turned him down last year, but he's going to get more money now this year. So happy for him. Happy for all these guys who brought so much joy to this community. And it's like I talked to J.C. Deacon last week about I was doing something on golf, and I talked to him about it, and he said, I told Sully, I've never seen the Gator Nation come together like it did for your team. And I can't argue with that. Now, look, when football wins, we're all losing our minds and we're partying on the streets. But it did. There was a galvanization, and it was a lot because of Caglione, Langford, Rivera, all these guys who all, other than Caglione, have been drafted, and we hope that they do great. And it's going to be, again, Major League Baseball is a lot more fun when there's a lot of Gators in it. And, we were talking about this on the radio yesterday. Is Langford the best player ever at Florida? I've never been able to say there's an argument with Brad Wilkerson, but maybe there is now. We'll discuss that further. Number 3 on the process service of Gainesville starting 5, Pat Fitzgerald out at Northwestern. It is a weird, ugly story, and it's hard for people to comment on it who don't know what happened. But everybody did comment on it, and most of the comments were, he's got to go. They did the Friday news dump, which everybody likes to do. 5 o'clock Friday, you get it out there. Everybody's doing something else. But there's so little going on that I think people started freaking out. And they're like, 2-week suspension, or was it 2 month? 2 month, 2 week, 2 weeks, 2 week suspension. what the H is that? What happened there? Was there anything that went wrong? And then everybody lost their minds, and Northwestern, I knew Fitzgerald was in trouble when the president came out of Northwestern, not the president of the United States, the president of Northwestern, came out and said, I may have screwed this up. That's not a good sign for you. And of course, he's let go now, and it's just a mess. It goes back to the same thing, and I've said this a million times, that no matter whether you knew or not something that was going on in your program, it's your job to know everything that's going on in your program. In fact, I'll ask Coach Spurrier about this on Friday. There's a great story that he tells, and he's told it here on this show before, about the Florida, when he got to Florida and they were telling him, hey, Coach, we're going to shave all the freshmen heads tonight. And he goes, why are you going to do that? And he goes, well, yeah, it's a tradition around here. And he goes, yeah, so's getting your ass kicked by Georgia. So we're going to change a lot of things around here. Don't shave their heads. They're a part of the team. That's bonding. That's how you bond. It's not by having naked snaps. It's just a weird situation. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there is something wrong with naked snaps when you force people to do that kind of stuff, okay? It's funny because Dennis Dodd just did his list of coaches on the hot seat, which he does every year, and we'll get Dennis on pretty soon, and probably after all the media days are done. And he had 7 coaches on the hot seat. One of them was not Billy Napier, which a lot of people want to throw him on the hot seat, which is a load of crap in a lot of ways. He's got Napier as a 2, which a 2 means you're good for now. And I think that's where Napier is. He's good. He's good. We don't know what the president's going to say. We don't know where, but I'm just thrilled that we don't have any scandal to deal with. And of course, as soon as I say that, somebody does something stupid, we got to deal with that. But at least we don't have to deal with it right now. Number 4, Pat Fitzgerald's out. I think Bob Huggins is still out. But he is saying, I never signed a letter. I never said I was resigning. No, you know who did? His wife sent it. So he went into rehab and said, I'm not leaving. And West Virginia is basically saying, yes, you are. There's no way you're getting out of this. I think it's just a play to get more money out of them and make them pay up. I think he knows he's got no chance to be the coach there anymore. But who knows where that thing is going to go. And this goes to 2 incidents. As you know, what one of them was a gay slur, one of them was a DUI. I don't know what they're going to do there, but I do know that I don't think he's going to ever be the coach there again. The question I have is, does Pat Fitzgerald get another job? Does Bob Huggins, who's a great coach, a lot of people will tell you, get another job? But by the way, Pat Fitzgerald, 3 of his last 4 years went 1-8 in the Big Ten. Now, I know it's hard to win at Northwestern, and he has won at levels that have been surprising, but he's, I think, 11 games under 500 in his career, and a lot of it has to do with the last 3 of the last 4 years. But the other year, I think it was 8-2 during the COVID year, or 8-1, something like that. So the dynamic of him being the coach there was always interesting, but now he's not, and probably shouldn't be. Finally, number 5, home run derby last night. Vlad Guerrero Jr. joins his father, the only father-sons to ever win it. Hit 72 homers during it. Pete Alonso got knocked off, former Gator, in the first round because the guy, Julio Rodriguez, who had a lot of adrenaline coursing through his veins being in Seattle, hit 41 against him, and he couldn't even come close to that, so could not make it 3 in a row for him. But home run derby is done and over, and Vlad Guerrero Jr. has won it. Good for him. And that's all I have to say about that. Here's what I do have to say. We have to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Matt Baker. We got a lot of things to talk to him about. When we have Coach Spurrier on at the end of the week, we're going to talk to him a lot about SEC Media Days. We'll talk to Matt about it as well. And also, is FSU as good as people think they are? And is Miami still bad? These are questions intriguing minds want to know. So we'll ask him about that and more here on another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios.
Hi there, this is head ball coach Steve Spurrier, and I'm here with my wife Jerry and our good friend Sherry Houston, the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of North Central Florida. We're thrilled to announce that the 2-year anniversary of our restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, is coming up on August 14th. Last year we had so much fun celebrating with everybody that we're doing it bigger and better this year. We're hosting a special dinner and celebration that will include a chef's choice of premium buffet or your favorite Spurrier Gridiron Grill menu, including a filet mignon carving station, shrimp and grits, short rib risotto, wonderful seafood options, and many dessert options also.
Like my famous chocolate chip cookies.
Proceeds being donated to the local Ronald McDonald House.
Thrilled to once again partner with Coach Jerry and the Spurrier Gridiron team to raise funds for the Ronald McDonald House, benefiting families and children experiencing medical emergencies.
Spurrier's Gridiron Grill will be donating 11% of all of our money from food and 66% of drink sales to the Ronald McDonald House.
Go to Spurriers.com right now and reserve a ticket before they sell out.
We'll have wonderful food, special guests, and a limited edition of the 2nd year anniversary collector's coins, as well as prizes like a dinner with me and Jerry. We couldn't have become one of the busiest and most successful restaurants in the Southeast without your support. So we want to celebrate with the most important people of our team, and that's you.
I want to celebrate with some of those cookies. Do you have any of those?
Sure do. Right here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life, and the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another duly noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Ribco To Go. Come on down and enjoy it. Okay, and welcome back to another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. And usually we have Coach Spurrier on Tuesday, but we'll have Coach Spurrier on Friday's show Today we're going to have instead one of the best sports writers around, a guy who I have a lot of respect for, Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times, who I know has started kind of getting into my world with a little newsletter. You're kind of fighting my audience there, aren't you?
Yeah, we started a newsletter just focused on Florida college football. When I say Florida, I don't just mean the Gators, I mean everybody. A couple months back, and honestly, it's one of the things I enjoy the most. Just because I'm able to kind of connect the dots between what's going on in this wacky sport of college football that we all love and what's happening nationally to what's going on locally and in the state. And you can sign up on our newsletters on tampabay.com.
Yeah, it's a weird year going forward because I never thought, well, I can't say I never thought, but 2 or 3 years ago, I would not have thought Florida would be coming off back-to-back 6 and 7s, and FSU would be the team people were picking to be in the playoffs. And my first question to you is, how good can FSU be this year?
I definitely think they're a playoff team, Dooley. I think they have that potential, is what I should say. You know, if I were picking right now, I think they beat Clemson, and I think they win the ACC. I think there's a gap, right, between what it takes to be a playoff team and what it takes to be a playoff contending team, a team that can actually win the thing. And we saw that last year. Obviously, you look at TCU. Yeah, yes, they were good enough to make the playoff. They were good enough to win a game. And they weren't good enough to beat Georgia. So I think Florida State can kind of be in that range where they're going to be good enough to, you know, I think going into the final week of the season, they're going to be one of the teams in contention. But no, I don't think they can win the national championship. But I think, you know, they've got a good amount of talent, particularly at skill players. You know, Trey Benson was almost a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Johnny Wilson at receiver was hit and miss, but really came on at the end. And then, you know, in this sport, you know as well as I do, if you've got a quarterback, you got a chance. And Jordan Travis is a very good, maybe better than very good college quarterback. You know, forget about the NFL, all that stuff. He's really good at what he does right now. He's mobile, he's elusive. He was the difference between Florida State winning and losing against the Gators last year. And I think he's good enough on his own to make a difference in a few games, potentially even that Clemson game in Week 4 in Death Valley. So, yeah, I absolutely think Florida State's good enough to make the playoff, and we'll see what happens after that.
I will say this, not only do they open up with LSU, and then, as you said, Clemson in Week 4, so all of a sudden they could be 2-2, and everybody goes, oh, man. I mean, it could happen. I mean, I know LSU's as good as Florida State. I'm pretty sure Clemson's as good as Florida State. It's a matter, I think it still comes down to the same old axiom, handful of plays and a handful of games as to how far you go.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we saw the LSU game last year, how close that was. I mean, it goes down to a blocked extra point with no time, right? And I think LSU is going to be better this year just because, you know, last year that game was Brian Kelly's debut. So, you know, Week 1's always kind of weird, and you add in the new coach, that whole thing. I think FSU is going to be better too, just to be fair to the other side. But there's that. And Clemson, I don't know what to make of them quite yet. Obviously, talent-wise, they're Clemson. They're going to be really good. I don't think they're going to be like 2016, 2018 kind of talent where they got dudes all over the defensive line and a bunch of NFL receivers. They're not. But I still think they're going to be really talented. I'm just curious how Garrett Riley at offensive coordinator is going to work out. The offense had frankly gotten stale, and you know, to connect this to another part of the state, maybe the turning point was when Jeff Scott was one of the co-coordinators when he left to take over USF. The Tigers weren't the same after that, particularly at the receiver, which is one of his positions, one of his kind of bread and butter. So I think Clemson's still going to be pretty strong, and if Garrett Riley's as good as he was at TCU, they're going to have a chance to be very impressive. But I kind of want to see it on the field a little bit first. Yeah,
you mentioned TCU, and I know you cover the state, but you talk about a team that I have like if I was still doing the AP poll, you're still doing it, right? I don't know what I do with TCU because they won 1 million games in the last possession last year. And the offensive coordinator is gone, the quarterback's gone. I don't know what I would do with them.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Obviously, the coordinator leaving is a big deal. I mean, Garrett Riley's he's going to be a star in this business. He kind of already is, but he's going to be a head coach sooner rather than. But the quarterback one is key as well. I mean, Max Duggan is one of the best players in TCU history. There's no question about that. And I mean, you just look at some of the games that he willed his team to win, or in the case of the Big 12 title game against Kansas State, almost did it by himself, almost willed him to win there. You don't lose a Max Duggan without a drop-off. Very, very, very few programs have been able to do that historically, and certainly in the last generation. You know, example I always go back to is Texas, right? Everyone wants Texas to be back. Is Texas back? Okay, well, look at them when the last time they were really good for a bit. They had Vince Young and Colt McCoy back to back.
Yep.
You don't. That doesn't happen very often. You know, the string that Bama's had and OU's had, that's extremely rare. You know, I'll use another example: Clemson. Clemson had Deshaun Watson. They had Trevor Lawrence, but they had a Kelly Bryant in the middle. That's the way it usually is, where sometimes you're gonna dip. So I don't think it's fair to expect TCU to be certainly not a playoff team. It's outlandish, but they're just gonna regress. They're gonna regress to the mean because you don't have a Max Duggan and then show up with another Max Duggan. That very seldom happens unless you're just getting 5-star after 5-star, and even then you need a lot of luck to make it happen.
Let me ask you about Miami, who obviously has been in a lot of recruiting battles with Florida, won some, lost some, but obviously I don't think they expected, even with the culture change that they were trying to install, the losses they had last year, especially Middle Tennessee. And I don't know what to think of them this year. It feels like they've improved the roster and they seem to be on the right track, kind of like Florida is, but I still don't know what to expect of them. It is a weird year in that this state is full of a lot of teams that I don't know what to think about.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't had to pin on Miami for a while now. It seems like every year they could be either pretty darn good, 9-3, maybe higher than that if they get lucky breaks, or just not very good, and neither one would surprise me. That's kind of where they are this year. They're going to have talent. They always have a good amount of talent, especially in the ACC, relative to the competition. And they recruited at a pretty high level this past cycle. I honestly thought what Mario did there with the top 10 class, that's kind of what I expected from Billy Napier in his first full cycle. And Mario was able to get it done. The difference that I see, though, I don't know about Mario as a game day coach. I'm surprising. That's a surprising conclusion for me to reach, just because I respected what he did at Oregon so much. I mean, I said it at the time. I thought if Scott Strickland called me and said, Matt, who should we hire to replace Dan Mullen? Mario Cristobal would have been my guy, because I felt good about him as a recruiter, and he did a good enough job at Oregon on the field and everything to make me think that he could do it at Miami too, or in Florida in that scenario. But the fact is, last year was way worse than it should have been. And yeah, maybe they had talent issues, maybe some of the guys weren't bought in, and this, that, and the other. But look, they had the Broyles Award winner as the top coordinator in the country, and their offense was not good. And they had a really good quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke, and they just underachieved. There's no excuse for what happened against Middle Tennessee, absolutely none. So that leads me to have more questions about Mario Cristobal heading into year one, and that makes kind of part of the early part of their season a lot more interesting to me. You know, they open against Miami of Ohio, who's probably going to be one of the better teams in the MAC. And then I think it's week 2, Jimbo Fisher comes to town, and talk about a fascinating team and a fascinating coach. The Aggies certainly are that.
Yeah, that's going to be very fascinating to watch that game. We have so many great games lined up early in the year. I love that part of it, and it's just going to get better, as you know, Matt, with the conferences changing and everything. And eventually, look, it's not going to happen next year, but the following year, the SEC will go to 9 games. I don't think there's much question about that. ESPN wasn't in position to give them more money this year, and we all know why. But we'll see what happens there. I want to ask you about UCF though, and Gus Malzahn's statement that don't call it the Big Three anymore. And my thing was, win a real national championship before you pop off. Yes, UCF is really good. They have a good program, but and it's easy to say that when the other schools are down, which Florida and Miami are, but I still can't consider UCF as it being a Big Four.
I don't think I can either. This is one of those like who's on your Mount Rushmore questions where it just kind of like depends on what lens you want to view it through and that sort of thing. It's a great talking season question, no doubt about it. So yes, if you look at the last 10-ish years or so, they've been probably the most consistent team in the state, even though they obviously had the one really down year with under O'Leary at the end. But the New Year's Bowl games and the 2017 season and all that stuff. But the fact is they haven't reached the height and the highs that Florida did and under Spurrier and Urban and FSU did with Jimbo and Bobby and Miami did under Schnellenberger and Jimmy Johnson and Erickson and those guys. So they don't have the track record in the history to be included in that conversation. I think you're right. Win make the play, win a national championship, or consistently challenge for it the way those three programs did in the past. And then we can talk about them being in that mix. But the fact is, UCF has separated itself, right? We can still say there's a big three, and then there's UCF, and then there's everybody else. And we have to give the Knights credit for what they did. I mean, my colleague Joey Knight and I did a big story a couple weeks ago on how UCF leapfrogged USF to get to this point.
I read that. Very, very good story, yeah.
Yeah, if you go back 15 years in a time machine and tell somebody in Tampa or Orlando, okay, not only is UCF going to be better, they're going to completely leapfrog USF to the point where the Bulls can't even ride on little brother's coattails into a bigger conference. You would have thought you were crazy. But that's what happened because they invested. They hired really good coaches, had a couple in a row that hit, and what O'Leary did, and Frost and Heupel. And now Gus being at least competent, with a higher ceiling, obviously, than that, to where UCF has gotten to the point where we can even talk about them as a big.
Well, and that's a funny thing. And now that they're in the Big 12, they're picked 8th in the Big 12, which, again, it's not like Florida would be picked any higher in the SEC, but the SEC is a different conference, as we all know. I do want to get to SEC Media Days and Billy Napier and what he's going to face there. And I always say, look, if there's every press conference I've ever been to of Billy Napier, and you've been to a million, even more than I have, because I don't go to that many, as you know. But I always walk away going, man, he seems to understand what's going on. He seems to get things. He seems to have a good plan. And then you watch him play, the spring game being a good example, and you go, maybe not. And that's what I think Gator fans want to see is an ability to adjust and make plays and be a better. I think he needs to be a better play caller. I think he needs to be a better clock manager. He's got to be a better offensive coordinator. I still think Florida is only going to be as good as its defense, which has been abysmal the last 3 years. But he's got to be better at his job as well.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think if this year goes the way I expect it to, and I think Florida's going to be around 500, 5-7, 7-5. Don't hold me to anything right now. It's July, but I think they're going to be in that mix. And I think after that, it's going to be a real awakening where Florida's going to have to figure out what they want to do. I understand Napier's. I'm not talking about firing, but just to be clear. But I understand Napier's philosophy, where he thinks he's a good enough play caller and can be an offensive coordinator and do everything there, where they don't need an offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, so they can have the 2 O-line coaches. I completely understand that philosophy and that idea. However, in practice in year 1, it was not good. If it's not good enough in year 2, which I think we would agree is a realistic possibility, then at some point you kind of have to adjust and figure out, is this the best way? Is this the best thing going? And, it's just one of those things that's easy to second guess beforehand. Because you're seeing across the country that teams or head coaches are giving up play calling duties. Gus Malzahn at UCF, Jimbo Fisher theoretically at Texas A&M. We'll see what it actually looks like with Bobby Petrino. And there's just so much more to being a head coach, where if you're focused on what am I going to call on 3rd and 7, then that's time you're not focused on NIL and the portal and some of these other things. So yeah, I think that's going to be one of those things, just like not having a full-time special teams coordinator. I think these are some of the things that are easy to second-guess ahead of time. And if things don't go well this year, it's going to have to lead to some tough questions internally and reevaluating. It worked in the past, but does that work in 2023 and 2024?
Yeah, and that's of course part of the thing is having 3 coaches leave for the NFL, and none of the coaches that left, people went, oh no, they all went good. We'll be all right with that. And again, doesn't mean that the new coaches coming in are going to be better. It's still going to come down to personnel. And it boggles my mind how, and maybe you saw it better than I saw it, how Florida got so poor at personnel under Dan Mullen. And I don't want to just blame him, but they did. They got where they just weren't very good in terms of the personnel, taking 5 stars that were not good where they were and weren't good here either. I mean, Lingard and Bowman and Brenton Cox even, who had only had one move, and that was to rush the passer as hard as he could. It's just the personnel level is something he's trying to build up. And as you know, Matt, seems like they're doing a great job in recruiting for next year. They continue to get 4 and 5 star guys. So I still think it may be 25 before they get a roster that can contend.
Yeah. So if you're looking at what's the argument for why the Gators could be really good in 24, you're betting on either Jack Miller developing into a player that we haven't seen him, at a level we haven't seen him reach yet. And maybe he can. He was hurt a bunch last year. Maybe that's a possibility. Or you're counting on DJ Lagway, the 5-star quarterback, to come in immediately and play at an elite level, which is really hard to do. And that's no knock on DJ. That's just the reality of it. There's not a lot of guys who can be like Trevor Lawrence was at Clemson in year 1. It usually takes time. So, yeah, I think you're probably right. We're realistically looking at 25 as like a time when Florida might be back to Florida, unless they do really well in the portal or something like that. But I guess I would say on Billy is if you look at the way he's recruiting in this 24 class with Lagway and a bunch of those guys, that is what I expected to see this past year, from this past cycle, I should say, from Billy, where this looks like Florida recruiting. This looks like a machine that is going in the right direction. And if you want to be optimistic, that is why. That is what Billy was brought here to do, and we are seeing proof of concept on the recruiting trail that he is able to do it. Now, the question I have is, what happens if Florida goes 5-7 this year? How many of those guys end up sticking? Maybe all of them do, maybe some of them don't. I don't know. We're obviously a ways away from that happening. But that is a legitimate question and a serious question that I think should kind of be in the back of Florida fans' minds going forward. But if this class sticks, or most of it sticks, and they end up with a top 5, top 6 class, whatever it is, that's your sign that this train is moving in the right direction. Yeah,
and that'll be an interesting. I brought this up. I think people need to quit worrying about the schedule. The schedule's tough. Yeah, it's tougher than Georgia's. Okay, you know why? Georgia doesn't have to play Georgia. But it's also, you got to go to LSU. You got to go play in front of 51,000 people in your opening game. I don't know how you're going to handle that crowd. You got to go to both Columbias. Come on. The schedule is manageable, and it's just a matter of whether you have good enough players, and do you make those a play here and a play there to win close games. And that, to me, it's still going to come down to that. And it kind of came down to that last year in a lot of games. They got back in the game against LSU. They got back in the game against Florida State. Obviously got back in the game against Tennessee. Yeah, they just couldn't finish it off, and a lot of it was because the quarterback was throwing balls to the end zone when he on Hail Marys and last plays of the game. But there's no reason to think. I do think this, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, Matt. I think the new rules are going to help Florida because they're going to be a team that wants to run the ball and with the great backs that they have and control the clock, and the game will be a little shorter, and that will help Florida get it into the fourth quarter with a chance to win. Now the question is, can they win those games?
Yeah, I can see that because I think you're exactly right. Billy Ball is going to be a lot more run heavy than the fun and gun days, right? Like, that's just Billy's MO. Now, I think in a perfect world, Billy would have a bunch of receivers who can run 4-4 and a Danny Warfel, and go out and throw it a zillion times and win. But they don't have that. What he does have is an offensive line that's going to be good, maybe better than good, and two excellent running backs, maybe a third, and Cam Carroll, the transfer from Tulane. So they're going to rely on that run. And I think you're right, too, in terms of it's going to come down to a few close plays the way it did last year. I guess we can look at like the Tennessee game and the way Florida came back in that. Some of it is the Gators didn't quit, and give them credit for that. Some of it is Tennessee took their foot off the gas a little. I think it's both. I think it's a mixture. But the fact is they were competitive in a good amount of those games and had chances to win and couldn't get it done. The sign of a good team is the ones that can win those, right? Where they can go out and do that. I mean, I'm thinking of like 2014 Florida State in my mind, where they made every game way more interesting than they had to, but they were able to pull them out because they had the dudes and they had the belief and all that stuff. We'll see whether the Gators are able to kind of come close to that and pull in some of those wins. Because look, if we're right, and this is a team that is going to be in that 6-6 range, for them to go to a bowl game or do better than that, they're going to have to do that against some really good teams. South Carolina is going to be pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. Tennessee is going to be, I think, pretty strong. In Georgia and Utah and Florida State and LSU. You're going to have to – they're not going to be able to out-talent everybody. It's going to have to come down to execution and scheming and making those handful of plays that make a difference between 5-7 and 7-5.
Yep, absolutely. Joining us on our Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line is Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times. It is time for us to play the Big Mills Cheesesteak Yes, No, Where, Maybe, where we ask 3 questions and Matt answers them yes, no way, or maybe. All right, number one for you, Matt. A team from this state is playing in a New Year's Six bowl game.
We're including the playoff in that?
Yes.
Yes.
And
yeah, Florida State. Florida State's, I think their floor, barring a horrific run of injury or something, I think their floor is New Year's Six.
I don't want to hear that. But
it's the truth. They got a really good quarterback. They got a good receiver. Good receivers. They got and look, Mike. I had a bunch of questions about Mike Norvell a year ago at this time, but he answered them. He's the guy we saw at Memphis who had really fun, really good offenses that evaluated well and developed well. He's that guy. I firmly believe that, and you know, I think this year is minimum is like a Peach Bowl or Orange Bowl or whatever the New Year's Six is. I think that's the floor.
No, I don't disagree with you, unfortunately, but it is what it is, and you know, I think that they're again, like I said earlier, with those 2 early games, it could kind of just derail the whole season, but we'll see how it goes. Number 2, Alabama will win the West. And let me change that question. Alabama will be picked to win the West by the SEC media.
Maybe. Them and LSU are pretty tight in my mind. Bama is still Bama. LSU does have a returning quarterback, which matters. You know, I've thought a little bit about my preseason top 25 and where I'm gonna have where. Yeah, that's a definite maybe. I can go absolutely either way on that because I think it's going to be a close one. And actually, now that I think about it, LSU is at Bama, and maybe that's the difference, is that the game there that's going to matter is in Tuscaloosa.
And finally, on yes, no, where, maybe, the SEC loses a coach after this season.
Yes, I think so. I don't know who it'll be off the top of my head, but just the way this industry is, something weird happens every year, right? Like, go back, take us in a time machine 5 days ago and tell me Pat Fitzgerald is out at my alma mater, Northwestern. I would have thought crazy. But this is a sport and that is wacky with insane fan bases, and I mean that with absolute love and respect. But weird, crazy things happen. So yeah, I would absolutely buy somebody leaving or being forced to leave or whatever the case is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you saw any hazing when you were at Northwestern, but
No, and what's crazy is I covered the team Fitz's second year, so it was 2007. And believe me, I've done some soul searching here in the last couple of days. Like, did I miss something? What could I have done as a Cub reporter? And it's absolutely wild to think about it. I mean, Fitz is there's not a human being who has ever walked the earth that is more Northwestern than Pat Fitzgerald. And so to think that he would be in this position is absolutely crazy. And I'm not defending it. I completely understand it all makes sense, but I'm still wrapping my head around how all of that was able to happen and all of that was allowed to happen by somebody. And I don't know what Fitz knew or what he should have known, but the fact is, if it was the university thought and their investigation found that something bad happened, that's still wild for me to kind of process everything.
It is. It's a weird deal. Did you work for the student newspaper when you were there?
I did. I covered the football team for the Daily Northwestern my senior year, and I'm certainly proud of the work.
I was going to say, yeah, you must be proud of them, yeah.
Absolutely, and on my list to do in the next couple of days is send a note to those reporters for commending them on a job well done, because it's not easy to do. Obviously, if something went on and I didn't know about it, and that was a failure on me as a Cub reporter. And it's not easy to go up against this system and big college football, but they did it. We're proven right by everything that happened. And again, that's not easy. And I got a ton of respect for those people. I just hope they don't take my job in the next couple of years.
You're right. Matt, they won't take your job. You do a great job, and we appreciate you. And again, you can subscribe to the newsletter by going to...
Yeah, TampaBay.com, and there's a thing at the top for newsletters, and it's our sports newsletter.
That's great, and you do a great job. And thanks so much for joining us, Matt.
You got it. Thanks, Dooley.
All right, Matt Baker from the Tampa Bay Times. I ran a little late with him, but I love talking to him. Let's get a break and come back. We'll do all the other fun stuff we do in the third segment when we come back here on another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life. And the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another Duly Noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Fight Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Hi there, this is head ball coach Steve Spurrier, and I'm here with my wife Jerry and our good friend Sherry Houston, the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of North Central Florida. We're thrilled to announce that the 2-year anniversary of our restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, is coming up on August 14th. Last year, we had so much fun celebrating with everybody that we're doing it bigger and better this year. We're hosting a special dinner and celebration that will include a chef's choice of premium buffet or your favorite Spurrier Gridiron Grill menu, including a filet mignon carving station, shrimp and grits, short rib risotto, wonderful seafood options, and many dessert options also.
Like my famous chocolate chip cookies.
Proceeds being donated to the local Ronald McDonald House.
Thrilled to once again partner with Coach Jerry and the Spurrier Gridiron team to raise funds for the Ronald McDonald House, benefiting families and children experiencing medical emergencies.
Spurrier's Gridiron Grill will be donating 11% of all of our money from food and 66% of drink sales to the Ronald McDonald House.
Go to Spurriers.com right now and reserve a ticket before they sell out.
We'll have wonderful food, special guests, and a limited edition of the second year anniversary collector's coins, as well as prizes like a dinner with me and Jerry. We couldn't have become one of the busiest and most successful restaurants in the Southeast without your support. So we want to celebrate with the most important people of our team, and that's you.
I want to celebrate with some of those cookies. Do you have any of those?
Sure do. Right here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. Again, Coach Spurrier will be with us on Friday's show, and Friday's show he will actually start the show, so we'll have a good conversation with him. Let's get to our Hesser and Kipke three things, and as you guys all know, Hesser and Kipke is a great Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of workers' compensation and family law. Ken and Jennifer take great pride in their one-to-one focus on each and every client they represent. Ken is board certified in workers' compensation law by the Florida Bar, while Jennifer possesses extensive jury trial experience. I want to say expertise. Experience with a nearly 20-year background as a prosecutor. If you don't believe me, just check out their 55 or 60 or 70 or 80, maybe 100 5-star Google reviews. We appreciate them so much, and if you want to call them at 339-9920, 352-339-9920, or get an appointment at hklawfl.com. There you got it. We appreciate our good friends at Hesser and Kipke. All right, number one, SEC Media Days right around the corner. It's less than a week away, and it's interesting. Florida came out with their list of the people they're going to take. Kingsley Aguaquan, I always screw his name up, the pronunciation. Aguaquan, the center. Let's just call him Kingsley the center. Is going to be one of them. Jason Marshall, which tells you a lot about how they think Jason Marshall is going to be a big-time player. And he needs to be, because the defense has got to get better. And then Ricky Pearsall, which no big surprise there. I was curious, and I looked it up, how many quarterbacks were going. And there's only 5. KJ Jefferson, Jaden Daniels, Will Rogers, Spencer Rattler, and Joe Milton. The I don't lose in Florida comment. So we'll see if he loses in Florida. Look forward to that game. But it is going to be fun for all the people that are going to be there. Again, it's a very short summer when you play in the last game of the baseball season. And then SEC Media Days is 3 weeks later. For the hacks that have to do that. Again, I'm out of the business now. I don't have to worry about having to do that, but I would be, and I know that's why Mick Hubert, one reason he told me that he got out was they kept going to Omaha and being there forever, and then he'd come back and right away they were ready for football season, and he just felt like he didn't have the energy to do it anymore. So it is hard, but it's fun. It's a fun ride to be on, especially when you're young, which I'm not. All right, number 2 on the Hesser and Kipke 3 things. There is a small group of people, and I don't know how big it is, and I see it on Twitter, that are not happy that Florida is going to spend $400 million on stadium expansion. Look, I can sit down and explain why it's necessary. I don't know that $400 million is necessary. I don't know that they'll spend $400 million. They're going to ask for bids. But this is the new way of college football. College football had an attendance drop 7 years in a row. Finally, last year, they didn't. It went up. You know why? People wanted to get out of the house. They were so happy at post-COVID. I just think that you're going to have to make it a place you've got to be. You've got to be at the game, not only for the game, the crowd, the experience, but you got to be comfortable. This is what they're trying to do, and they're just trying to make it better. I don't think anybody's trying to knock down the noise in that place. Somebody said, think about what 90,000 did to Auburn a couple of years ago. I'm like, a lot of those people were up in the sunshine seats. Nobody could hear them. So at any rate, that's my opinion on it. Anyway, number 3 is the All-Star game is tonight. We're taping on Tuesday. It was last night if you're listening to it on Wednesday, which you probably are. My disdain for All-Star games. I hate them. I don't watch them. I just don't pay. When I was a kid, it was a big deal. But the baseball All-Star game was the one that kind of held up for the longest. But eventually, when interleague play ruined it for me. Because you're playing against, you're batting, you're putting a pitcher up there going against a batter from the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, he just played. I mean, it's not like this is anything new, so it just doesn't do much for me. And I'm sorry. The Pro Bowl is almost obsolete now. The NBA All-Star Game is just a celebration of great players. All-Star games have kind of lost all their ambiance, in my opinion. So I'll watch a little bit, but not much. I watched about a minute of the Home Run Derby last night. Just not my thing. I want games that matter. That's what I want. So that is our Hesser and Kipke 3 things. Let's get to our Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the Week. And it is to the 5 players who made World Cup teams from the University of Florida. Congratulations to all of them. 2 from Canada, 1 from the Philippines, 1 from Jamaica, 1 from Panama. They made their national teams, and they're going to be all playing in the World Cup, and that is great. And that is our Adams Ribco to Go Gators of the Week. We appreciate them. Let's get to our Leonardo's and Millhopper quick picks. There is not much to pick, okay? Obviously, there's no baseball this week, but we are going to, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a freebie here. All you got to do is say, who will be the most impressive person at Big 12 Media Days? Now, there's no wrong answer. If you answer Greg Sankey, that's going to be a wrong answer. Other than that, you can pretty much get a right answer. All you got to do is say Steve Sarkisian or Quinn Ewers or somebody like that. I'm giving you a freebie here to qualify. And Mike Tudine, who won our contest, I told him I would get his thing in the mail Monday. It is not in the mail yet. I'm sorry. I got busy with some stuff today. I will get it in the mail tomorrow, I promise you. Wednesday is kind of my off day. That is our Leonardo's at Millhopper quick picks. I got to go by there. I still have his book that I got to get him, Kyle, over at Leonardo's. Let's get to our the Swamp Games of the Week. It is slim pickings, but it's never slim pickings at the Swamp Restaurant. In fact, Saturday is Sangria Saturday. Cool, refreshing sangrias on special. They have their Sunday brunch. They got a lot going on over at the Swamp Restaurant. We appreciate them. There's not even a baseball game until Friday, and then it's on ESPN Plus only. So that Chicago at Atlanta, I'm looking forward to. I'll watch that. I'll flip it on. Wimbledon's on. I've gotten into Wimbledon this year for the first time in a long time. I used to be a big tennis guy. I've kind of watched a lot of it. I'm just trying to find guys and ladies that I can root for. And today, when I was watching, the number 1 player in the world got upset, so I was into it. So I'm back into it. So you've got that going for you. And then Big 12 Media Days, we mentioned earlier, is going on. I don't even know where it's going to be. There's not a Big 12 network per se, but it'll be somewhere. You'll be able to find stuff somewhere. There's not a lot. Next week, Friday, when we do there'll be a lot to talk about in terms of all the great things that are going to be on TV, and it's just going to get better and better. And the Swamp, that's why the Swamp's on board right now, so they can be part of this going forward through football season. We appreciate Kyle and Ryan over there at the Swamp, who do an unbelievable job. Finally, let's get to Pat Dooley's story time. It is brought to you, as always, by Eastlake Pediatrics. In fact, I sent a text to an email, actually, to Mike Jordan over at Eastlake Pediatrics. Said, man, every time I tee up, I'm teeing up with a ball that says Eastlake Pediatrics, because they were the sponsors of our golf balls for our golf tournament. And appreciate them so much. I'm going to do a quick one today, and it's why I miss SEC Media. I'm going to miss not being there again this year. It is something I really enjoyed, but mostly I enjoyed being around people afterwards. I could tell you some stories. Some of them I can't tell you on the air about the parties afterwards. It's almost like an SNL cast party after SEC Media Days when we get all our work done. But my favorite story is the year that all of a sudden one of the best players at Florida just wasn't there, just didn't show up. He was supposed to be there. Where is he? We're trying to figure out, where's Mike Pearson? Where is he? Instead, they brought William Green, who was a marginal player. He was not a terrible player. He was okay, but he wasn't SEC Media Days worthy. Let's put it that way. It turned out Mike Pearson was riding in the back of a pickup truck, and it went through that garage at the O-Dome, and he banged his head really hard and had a concussion and couldn't fly, couldn't be at SEC Media Days. And we're like, well, he would have been more fun than William Green. No offense, William Green. I don't think anybody talked to you that day. Nobody knew who you were, to be honest with you, I don't think, but no offense, it's like I said. But I've got some other SEC Media Day stories I'll tell on Friday's show for our Pat Dooley Storytime. So that'll do it. We got through a full hour. Appreciate Zach for being a great producer again today. And we'll be back with another show Friday. Coach Spurrier will be on, and then we'll go from there. We're kind of playing out July, just trying to figure things out as we go through July. August, man, we are going to kill it. I promise you. And I think we're doing a pretty good job right now. That's just my opinion. That's going to do it for our show today. Thanks again to everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody for watching. Until next time, I am Pat Dooley. I am deep. I'm way back, and I am out of here.